Welcome to our Saturday night simulcast. This is Saturday, November 28th, after Purdue's pretty tough loss to Rutgers earlier today, 37-30 loss. I want to thank our sponsor, and that, of course, is the Purdue Union Club Hotel, who probably had some dejected Purdue fans at their watch party, but we appreciate their business. And we also want to say that we are running a holiday special. Now is a good time to become a member of Gold and Black. You can get for $75, get an annual subscription, and you can get a $75 gift certificate at either Nike or Adidas for merchandise. So it's kind of a year for free. So if you're in the market for a Cyber Monday gift or a good holiday gift, now's the time to do it. So, but there's no way to sugarcoat this one, guys. Purdue did not look good in the second half, totally dominated by Rutgers in a way that I was surprised, to be very honest, and that Purdue couldn't stop Rutgers. Purdue couldn't get the football in the fourth quarter. But Tom, you wrote your 10 observations. This is a tough loss and leaves you wondering, all right, what's going to be next for the season? But what hit you most about what happened today in Ross-Ade Stadium?
Well, first, the post-game press conference, guys, I don't think I've seen Jeff Brom this despondent ever. He has to be exasperated himself, searching for answers to this team. Now, it's 3 losses in a row, guys. That 2-0 start seems like ancient history now. You wonder if they can get this ship righted before the season concludes. But, Alan, to your point, what a tale of 2 halves for the Boilermakers. As you said, the second half was a total disaster, guys. I thought, after David Bell made that great touchdown catch in the corner of the end zone to put Purdue up, I think, 30-20, about 9 minutes to go in the third quarter, I thought Purdue was in good shape, guys, and was probably going to win that ball game. But you get the subsequent kickoff return for a touchdown. Purdue gets the ball back. Painter throws the interception. Rutgers scores another touchdown. Game over right there. And it brought me back to some areas that we heard time and again in the offseason that Purdue was going to try to get better at. And one of those was getting off the field on third downs. And Purdue could not get off the field at all in the second half, guys. Look at the time of possession. Look at the statistics. That was abysmal. It didn't get any takeaways for the second week in a row, which proves to be very detrimental as well in that run game in the second half. I know you can't run the ball if you don't have it. But again, just an inability to run the football really hurt this team badly in the second half as well. So there are a number of things you can pick at, guys, but those were some things that hit me right away.
I think the one number, Brian, that got me more than anything was the fact in the fourth quarter, Purdue runs 4 plays and doesn't throw a pass. Yeah. That's in a game that you're behind. Again, that speaks to Rutgers' dominance and hanging on to the football as much as anything else. That's nutty, though. I don't think I'd ever live to see that. I know, and it's easy now when you have a loss like this to say, oh my gosh, the sky is falling, and it sometimes appears that way. They're 6-12 after Jeff Brom signed his contract extension. It's not gone like they'd expected. This is a tough one, though, when you lose to Rutgers in a game where you still had some things to play for this year. And we've all agreed that you just need to show some improvement in this year. This is a wacky year. This is kind of a year that may not count in some people's minds, but you don't want to take a step backward. What say you, Brian, when you look at that from that perspective?
Yeah, this is kind of the rubber year. You did positive things in year 1 and 2, positive relative to what you inherited.
Right.
Year 3 was obviously a disappointment, but injury kind of factored very heavily into that. Now, year 4, as weird and randomized as this year was going to be, was an opportunity for them to prove year 3 to be the aberration that, we all have wondered if it was, simply because of injury. And I think part of the reason deep down Jeff Brom was so disturbed about this game was because Purdue is losing games it should win. And it's losing games it should win because of the fundamental elements of the game that Jeff Brom made bold changes in the offseason to address. This defense isn't working. The special teams have cost you games 2 weeks in a row because 2 field goals last week. If one of them goes through, you're at least in overtime. The touchdown on the kickoff return was the biggest play of this game. I thought it absolutely sucked the wind out of Purdue. It changed the momentum like that. And That's just a simple breakdown. These are areas where you have to be solid in the Big Ten, to win on a consistent basis. You can't blow everyone out like you did at Western Kentucky. You can't blow people out the way you did every now and then in year one and year two at Purdue, because you were able to innovate and you were able to instill energy in your team. This is all kind of plateaued now, and you're to the point now where if you're playing even with people and you're good enough to beat them and you're just not beating them, it's because a lot of the things that close football games shine a light on are failing you, whether that's game management, whether that's defensive breakdowns, whether that's special teams mistakes, whether that's dropped interceptions in the first quarter. All of this stuff just adds up on Purdue, and Purdue is not so good right now where it can put itself in a hole and still win that football game. And it's learning it the really hard way. It is daring crazy things to happen, whether it was the bad call last week by the official, whether it was all that happened this week with the breakdown on the kickoff return, all that stuff, the interceptions. Jack Plummer should be allowed to throw one interception a week and it not cost you the game. But everything else is, so tentative with this team right now that you literally can't make one mistake, or else it will tilt the entire game against you. And that's just where Purdue is right now. They just have to get way better across the board. This defense has to figure something out, because right now it's not working. They've got to shore up their special teams, and they've got to just be more consistent on offense. I know that's a lot of stuff, but all of it matters.
Yeah, I mean, big plays for the first time this year. I think that we looked it up when sitting next to Tom in the press box. The biggest play was a 44-yarder by Illinois in week 2, and then they they gave up obviously the kick return and the 62-yard play as well. 2 huge plays that just changed the complexion of this defense. In fairness, and everybody in COVID world's dealing with wild stuff, but you lose Derek Barnes, you play without George Karlaftis, all true. But there's still that fundamental thing that something's missing. There's not, you can't stop a Wildcat run that's the same play that they ran seemed like
right.
7 straight times, Tom. I mean, that seemed to me to be very, very troubling.
Yeah, Johnny Langan.
Yeah.
We have to buy a drink again in Piscataway, New Jersey, guys. He wasn't even on the depth chart provided to the media in the press box. And again, the third-string quarterback, of course, stunned everybody out. He talked about 21 carries, 95 yards, hit all 4 of his passes, had a touchdown mixed in there as well. And, boy, they really have Purdue figured out, or Purdue couldn't figure him out. The defensive line for Purdue, again, was not able to contain that. So, again, Brian talked about the defense. That was a disappointment, guys. I'd also like to talk about explosive plays. Jeff Brom always talks about explosive plays, chunk plays, and I'll be honest with you, they're just not there. And Rondale Moore's been a part of this offense for 2 weeks now, guys, and there still aren't any big explosive chunk plays. I'm not putting it all at his feet, but he himself doesn't really have any big explosive plays since he's returned as well. So, again, having to march down the field, executing 10, 11 play drives, 5, 6, 7 yards at a time is very tough. You're going to have a mistake along the way. So that's another thing I've noticed, just the lack of explosive plays by Purdue's offense, especially the last 2 weeks. But again, I will say this, 31 points last week at Minnesota, right? 30 points today. You'd like to think that's probably enough to win a lot of ball games for you in the Big Ten. Didn't do it either time. And again, I guess that takes us back to the defense, right, guys? And the issues there. We talk about personnel. No Karlaftis. Anthony Watts missed a game. I know they've had their issues there, but still, guys, this is a unit defensively that has a lot more to prove.
Yeah, Rondale Moore had that 33-yard reception/run in the second or third play from scrimmage last week, and it's kind of hasn't happened since. Now that obviously Rutgers had something to do with that. They were double teaming him and doing that, but David Bell wasn't near as effective as he has been, though he did make a great catch, and he still makes great plays when he gets the opportunity. All right, Brian, you got to fix this, and and we as I'll speak for myself here. I won't speak for you two. I said, well, they're going to Purdue will beat Rutgers, they'll beat Nebraska, and they'll go down and give Indiana all it can handle, and maybe win the crossover game, and voila, you got 5 wins, and you got to steer a step in the right direction. Now, everything's in question. That happens when you lose a game like this to Rutgers. What makes success here in the last 3 games of this regular season? I mean, obviously winning games does, but what does that look like, Brian, do you think?
Well, it doesn't matter as long as Purdue can't stop anybody. I mean, this is –
yeah.
I know they didn't have Derek Barnes in the second half. They didn't have George Karlaftis. That's huge. They had him last week. At least they had George Karlaftis in some form last week, and you couldn't stop Minnesota either. We were told the thing with Rutgers offense was their creativity, and that was what they really had to worry about. And what did they do? They ended up running Tim Tebow out there to just run up the middle 20 times. And 30 points on offense against a second and third string quarterback from a 1-4 team ought to be enough to win you the game. But Purdue's not going to beat anybody playing defense like this, and it's just not working. And this seems systemic to me. This seems like this is just personnel not taking to Bob Diaco and his system, and it's something that's just got to turn around on a dime. You ask me what success is from here on out. Success when you cannot stop anyone in the Big Ten is really hard to come by, because you're not going to win any games if you can't stop anybody. And you have Nebraska the rest of the way, you have Indiana, and then you have one more game. You'd like to say, hey, if you win 2 or 3, that's a pretty good deal. But what from the last 2 weeks defensively have you seen that suggests that this team can beat anyone?
Nebraska comes in next week, Tom, and this is I promise the last question on today's game, and then we're going to go to a little bit of basketball with Brian. But Nebraska comes in. I know they lost to Iowa. I know they're desperate. I mean, they're also desperate coming in next Saturday. Don't know the game time yet, but this will not be a walk in the park, just because Nebraska's also with one win this season. This is a back against the wall program that comes into Ross-Ade Stadium thinking it should win. I mean, could win certainly.
Yeah, you're right. They sort of become the butt of the jokes of everybody in college football. Since this season resumed. Of course, they were so vocal in Lincoln and beyond about wanting to play this football season. They threatened to go rogue, and games outside of the Big Ten. We all read the stories and got a kick out of it. Well, Nebraska got its wish, right? We're playing football, and they're getting their butt kicked, and everybody's having a good laugh at Nebraska's expense. They're paying attention to that, Alan and Brian. You guys know that. And it's a team, as Jeff Brom noted in the postgame, that's playing pretty good football. They played pretty good against Iowa this last Friday. Lost 26-20, trying to get their quarterback spot figured out. And know this too, guys. You understand and you realize Nebraska's lost 2 games in a row to Purdue. And they would love nothing better than to get better at the expense of Purdue and get some revenge against the Boilermakers as well. So it's just as a big a game for Nebraska it is for Purdue, guys. And I tell you what, there's a lot at stake for the Boilermakers moving forward here. I was going to write something I'm going to post here soon about what a big month December is coming up. There still is a chance for this team to maybe finish 5-4, and I don't think that's going to happen without a win against Nebraska. So it's going to be very fascinating theater next Saturday in Ross-Ade Stadium when they visit.
Yeah, no doubt. That will be an interesting storyline to watch. All right, Brian, we'll switch gears to basketball. Obviously, the Boilermakers did some interesting things in Florida and played well the first night, certainly with injury to Jaden Ivey. And obviously, Eric Hunter's long-term injury has caused some issues. But this is an interesting team to watch and will be a storyline to watch as the Boilermakers play again, I think next Tuesday at 3 in the afternoon. What'd you learn with that, and what are you seeing through the first weekend of Boilermaker basketball?
Well, Purdue got beat by Clemson when they had playing a game with like 1.5 guards. I mean, who can dribble on 1.5 ball handlers? You have. I think the thing that puts the face on it is that, Ethan Morton could only play 10 minutes in the first game, and that wasn't a coach's decision. I don't think he could play more than 10 minutes. He's coming back from mono, barely practiced. he had to play 25 against Clemson, and Clemson, plays its whole team, and they were pressuring like hell on the ball. Isaiah Thompson historically hasn't handled pressure really well as a point guard. Clemson really kind of turned the screws on that in the first half. I think that's what Clemson does. I don't think it was a Purdue specific thing. And Purdue was just in a jackpot. They just, kind of for that reason, you almost sort of shrug your shoulder at the result, because without Eric Hunter and without Jaden Ivey, you were in a really, really tough spot there. But I think, Purdue shot the ball well for 3 of 4 halves down in Florida. I think the freshmen all did some very positive things. I think clearly you have to get Trevion Williams going. He's got to be more efficient than he was. Going back and watching both games, he got a lot of shots that he makes more often than not. You have to figure that'll even out. But you have to get him to be more productive. You got to get him to avoid the cheap fouls that get him on the bench, because you can't get in an offensive rhythm when you're sitting on the bench. As good as Zach Edey has been, Zach Edey's still a freshman. He's going to have some inconsistencies here. And you have to get to the point where Trevion Williams is the guy who is delivering the way you need him to deliver. And but I think you saw enough from the newcomers this past week to understand clearly that this is going to be a really interesting team to watch. Probably a team that'll drive you crazy at times, but also a team that's going to get you really excited at times too.
Yeah, Brian, Purdue's really done well recruiting here lately under Matt Painter, getting the big front court players. Give us an idea maybe what fans can expect recruiting-wise, maybe who the Boilermakers are focusing on, and maybe how some of these next dominoes could fall in your eyes.
Yeah, Purdue's set up really well in this 2022 class. Obviously, Fletcher Lawyer being the first commitment was big time. It's a better commitment than it even looks like on paper. I'm saying that as a guy who's seen him play more than anyone. Where he ends up, rankings-wise, will be very different from where he is right now, if you ask me. Purdue's in a great spot with a guard from Philadelphia, Jameel Brown. Great spot with a forward from Minnesota, Camden Heide. They're right there with Jalen Washington, who's a big-time recruit from Gary. They're just sitting pretty on so many of these guys. Paul McMillan is a really highly recruited guard from Cincinnati. They're in a good spot for Isaac McNeely is a really good guard from West Virginia, who that is going to be a tough guy to get, but they're in the mix for him. They've just got the attention of so many good players from all over the place that this 2022 class could really be something. After a 2021 class where you pulled a recruiting coup in getting 2 top 40 guys who kind of sort of play the same position on paper, even though they won't at Purdue necessarily, but things are real. This is the best run of recruiting, Purdue's had under Matt Painter by a mile, and it's not slowing down in any way, shape, or form.
All right, we wanted to all of you that made it through this show, especially if you listened to it close to real time on Saturday night, Sunday morning. We wanted to have it end on a positive note, and that's it. Purdue basketball recruiting, and there'll be better days for all of this down the road. But a tough loss for the Boilermakers today in Ross-Ade Stadium, and we'll look forward to a lot on the site this next week. Basketball, football, as we lead into December. Hard to believe, but we're at December 2020, so we'll look forward to doing that. I want to thank our sponsor, the Purdue Union Club Hotel, and the good folks there for sponsoring our Zoomcast, and remind you also that we have our holiday special. Cyber Monday is a good time to join us at the Gold and Black. We've had a lot of people already join us. Great promotion going on. Check that out on our site. And for Tom and Brian, we wish you a good Saturday evening or Sunday as you watch this, and have a great week, everybody. And thanks again to all of you for watching and listening to us on goldenblack.com.